Last month, Iran announced it will stop using US GPS and switch entirely to China's BeiDou, even planning to shut down GPS reception inside its borders. That's not a software update. It's like, unplugging your country's compass, map, and clock all at once and wiring everything to a new source. Why now? What changes? Stay tuned. In a world where planes, banks, farms, and armies all depend on satellite timing and location, this move could blind weapons, scramble shipping, and shake markets, or it could give Iran the independence it's been chasing. Over the next few minutes, we'll rewind to how GPS became the invisible backbone of modern life, follow BeiDou's rise, look at the incidents that forced Iran's decision, and ask the big question, can BeiDou truly replace GPS? First, how did GPS become so powerful? Let's rewind. To understand why Iran's decision is so huge, we first need to see how GPS became the invisible network that runs modern life. Back in the 1970s, during the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a race, not just for weapons, but for precision. The U.S. military wanted a system that could guide missiles and troops anywhere on Earth, at any time, with pinpoint accuracy. The result was GPS, the Global Positioning System. It started as a purely military project, powered by a constellation of 24 satellites orbiting the Earth. These satellites constantly send out timing and location signals that any receiver, from a warship to a smartphone, can read. At first, only the U.S. military had access. But over time, GPS proved so reliable that the U.S. opened it for civilian use. And that, honestly, changed everything. Suddenly, the same system guiding fighter jets was helping pilots land safely, cargo ships find ports, farmers plant with precision, and even phone networks and stock exchanges stay perfectly synchronized. Today, over 6 billion devices around the world depend on GPS. Planes, trains, banks, delivery trucks, power grids, all rely on those satellites ticking in perfect rhythm above us. It's easy to forget, but every Uber ride, every ATM withdrawal, even your phone's clock depends on a signal from space, owned and operated by the United States government. That's where the issue begins. Because if one country owns the system everyone uses, it also controls the switch. In peacetime, that's fine. But in conflict, it means the U.S. can selectively weaken or shut off GPS signals for certain regions, blinding opponents in seconds. And that's exactly what worries countries like China and Iran. So how did China respond to that kind of power imbalance? That's where the story of BeiDou begins. China's journey to build its own navigation system began with a wake-up call. In 1993, a Chinese merchant ship bound for Iran was suddenly intercepted by the United States. The U.S. accused it of carrying materials for chemical weapons, a claim that turned out to be false. But what happened next shook Beijing. The U.S. cut off the ship's GPS signal, leaving it stranded in open water for more than a month. The crew drifted helplessly for 33 days, running low on food and fuel, until diplomatic pressure finally forced the U.S. to restore the signal. That moment made something painfully clear to China's leaders. Relying on a foreign navigation system was a national security risk. If GPS could be used to control or punish them once, it could happen again, during war, crisis, or even trade disputes. So in 1994, China made a historic decision. It would build its own satellite navigation network, fully independent from the United States. They called it BeiDou, which means Big Dipper. The road wasn't easy. In the 1990s, China lacked much of the advanced technology needed for global satellite systems. Western countries also imposed export restrictions, blocking key components. Yet China pressed forward. After a decade of relentless development, it launched its first 5 satellites in 2003. The early version known as BeiDou 1. Not long after, China was invited to join Europe's Galileo project, another navigation system in development. Hoping for technological exchange, China invested heavily, over 270 million euros. But under U.S. pressure, Europe still restricted access to core technologies and excluded China from major decisions. Rather than slowing down, this only fueled China's determination. By 2007, China launched the first BeiDou 2 satellite. Within just 5 years, it completed a regional network covering the entire Asia-Pacific. Then, in 2020, after launching more than 55 satellites, China officially announced that BeiDou had achieved global coverage, placing it in direct competition with GPS. It wasn't just a technical victory, it was a statement of independence, proof that China could build a strategic system the West said was impossible. But for Iran, the decision to switch wasn't about pride, it was about survival. Let's see what pushed them to make this move now. For more than 20 years, Iran relied on the US GPS system just like most other countries. It guided ships in the Persian Gulf, managed agricultural machinery, and supported communications networks. But in recent years, Iran learned the hard way that dependence on GPS came with invisible strings attached. The breaking point came in June 2025 during a 12-day conflict between Iran and Israel. According to Iranian officials, their military began experiencing mysterious navigation failures in the middle of combat. Drones lost their routes, missiles drifted off target, and naval ships suddenly couldn't determine their positions. At first, Iranian engineers thought it was an internal malfunction, until they discovered the real cause. The United States had deliberately disabled GPS signals over the region. The effect was immediate and devastating. Iranian drones that were supposed to hit precision targets missed entirely. Some aircraft even had to return mid-mission because they couldn't locate safe flight paths. On the seas, oil tankers lost their bearings, creating chaos in one of the world's busiest waterways. And that wasn't the only incident. Over the past few years, several Iranian nuclear scientists and military commanders were assassinated. Investigators later found a disturbing pattern. The attackers had tracked their targets through GPS-enabled devices, smartphones, car systems, and other Western-made equipment that constantly broadcast location data. Each of these events sent a chilling message. GPS was not just a navigation tool. It was a potential weapon of surveillance and control. Iran realized that as long as its military, economy, and infrastructure were tied to an American system, it was vulnerable. So, in mid-2025, Tehran made a historic decision. It would migrate all key industries, transportation, agriculture, and the Internet of Things, from US GPS to China's BeiDou. Over time, it plans to completely block GPS reception across its territory. This isn't a small tweak, it's a nationwide system reboot, touching everything from military operations to civilian navigation apps. Iran's deputy minister, Chit Sazban, explained the reasoning simply. BeiDou offers more accurate positioning, better anti-interference, and most importantly, freedom from US control. But can China's BeiDou system really deliver on that promise? Can it truly stand toe-to-toe with GPS? Let's break down the technology next. At first glance, GPS and BeiDou seem similar. Both are global navigation satellite systems orbiting high above the Earth. But dig deeper and you'll see they represent two very different worlds, one led by the United States, the other by China. Let's start with scale. The US GPS system operates about 31 active satellites, while China's BeiDou now has over 50 in orbit, nearly double. That gives BeiDou broader coverage and more redundancy, which means if one satellite goes offline, another can quickly take over. Next comes accuracy. The US GPS offers civilian accuracy within about 5 to 10 meters. BeiDou claims to deliver positioning down to the centimeter level, thanks to its network of ground-based monitoring stations, 10 times more than GPS. In everyday terms, that's the difference between knowing which street your car is on versus knowing exactly which parking spot you're in. But BeiDou's real advantage lies in its unique features. It's the only system that allows users to send short text messages directly through its satellites, even when the internet or phone networks are completely shut down. Imagine a rescue team lost in the mountains, or a soldier behind enemy lines still being able to transmit coordinates without any signal bars. That's a pretty powerful edge. Another major point is resilience. BeiDou's satellites are equipped with stronger anti-jamming technology, allowing them to maintain service even in areas where GPS signals can be blocked, like dense cities, mountains, or military zones under electronic warfare. However, it's important to remember that while BeiDou's hardware and precision are impressive, it's not yet as deeply integrated into global systems as GPS. The world's airlines, banks, and logistics networks still rely heavily on US infrastructure. So, replacing GPS entirely isn't like switching apps. It's like rewiring the backbone of a country's entire digital ecosystem. Still, for countries under US sanctions, like Iran, that trade-off might be worth it. The appeal of BeiDou isn't just about performance, it's about sovereignty. Using BeiDou means no foreign power can suddenly pull the plug, and Iran isn't alone. Several other nations have already tested or adopted BeiDou, and the results are telling. Let's look at a few real-world examples next. Iran isn't the first country to break away from the US GPS network, and it definitely won't be the last. Around the world, many nations have already begun adopting China's BeiDou, quietly weaving it into their military systems, infrastructure, and even daily life. Take Pakistan, for example. It was one of the earliest countries to fully embrace BeiDou. In 2013, Pakistan's military officially integrated the system into its operations, marking the first time China's navigation network was used beyond its borders. Then, during the 2019 standoff with India, BeiDou's reliability was put to the test. While India attempted to jam signals near the border, Pakistan's guided missiles and surveillance drones continued to operate with precision. Reports claim Pakistan was able to hit targets accurately despite electronic interference, something GPS alone couldn't guarantee. Then there's the Middle East. Saudi Arabia's Port Authority has already phased out GPS in key facilities, fully switching to BeiDou navigation for its ships and logistics systems. In the United Arab Emirates, hundreds of fishing vessels now rely on BeiDou terminals for location tracking and communication, crucial for safety when they sail far beyond traditional signal coverage. Beyond that, BeiDou's influence is spreading fast across Africa. Over 30 countries on the continent have built BeiDou monitoring stations to enhance local navigation accuracy and support projects like agriculture, mining, and transportation. From Kenya's trucking routes to Egypt's smart ports, BeiDou is quietly becoming part of the daily economic rhythm. And this isn't just about satellites, it's about strategy. In 2021, China and Iran signed a 25-year strategic cooperation agreement worth up to $400 billion. It covers everything from oil and energy to railways, ports, and communication systems, including satellite navigation. So for Iran, adopting BeiDou fits neatly into a much larger partnership, one that already makes China Iran's biggest oil buyer, accounting for nearly 90% of Iran's exports. In short, BeiDou isn't just a technology, it's a diplomatic tool, creating a network of countries that depend on China instead of the US. With more nations joining BeiDou's orbit, the question isn't just who's using it, but what it means for global power. Let's look at how this shift could reshape the world's balance of control. This isn't just a story about satellites. It's a story about power, independence, and control. For decades, GPS gave the United States a quiet but enormous strategic advantage. Whoever controlled GPS controlled the global flow of movement, trade, and timing. But with BeiDou's rise, that monopoly is starting to crack. When countries like Iran, Pakistan, or Saudi Arabia switch to BeiDou, they're doing more than just upgrading technology. They're reducing US leverage. In a crisis, the US can no longer threaten to shut down GPS signals over those regions. That's a major shift in global military dynamics. In simple terms, the US loses a tool of control and China gains one. Economically, the change could be just as significant. The global navigation satellite industry is worth hundreds of billions of dollars, affecting everything from smartphones and shipping to precision farming. If more nations adopt BeiDou-compatible systems, Chinese manufacturers and software developers will dominate that ecosystem. That means more Chinese chips, apps, and satellites embedded in global trade, and less reliance on US technology giants. Politically, this trend is reshaping alliances. The world is slowly dividing into two technological spheres, one orbiting around Washington and the other around Beijing. BeiDou is just one part of China's broader strategy to build parallel systems, its own internet infrastructure, payment networks, and security standards that can operate independently of the West. However, this shift isn't without risk. Some analysts warn that countries moving to BeiDou could find themselves trading one dependency for another. After all, full autonomy requires not just using a different signal, but building the hardware, data systems, and software to control it domestically. Still, the trend is unmistakable. As more nations seek digital sovereignty, BeiDou gives them a real alternative, one that didn't exist 20 years ago. For China, every satellite launched isn't just about navigation, it's about influence, reach, and credibility. So what does all of this mean for the future? Is BeiDou really the system that will replace GPS? Or is it just the start of a new space rivalry? Let's wrap up with what's next. So, what does Iran's dramatic switch really mean? At its core, it's not just about replacing one satellite system with another. It's about reclaiming control. For Iran, BeiDou represents a path away from United States dominance and toward digital sovereignty. For China, it's proof that decades of investment in space technology are now paying off, giving it real influence over how the modern world moves, connects, and communicates. The numbers tell the story. BeiDou now serves more than 1.5 billion users across 137 countries, generating over 530 billion yuan in economic benefits. It's not just catching up to GPS, it's building its own ecosystem, piece by piece. Each new country that adopts BeiDou chips or satellites strengthens that network, inching the world closer to a multipolar digital order. But the question remains, can BeiDou truly replace GPS? Technically, it can match and in some areas even surpass GPS performance. Politically, it offers freedom from United States control. Yet it also ties users more closely to China's technology sphere. The truth is, the future probably won't belong to a single system. Instead, nations may use both GPS and BeiDou side by side, creating layers of redundancy and competition in the sky. For the rest of us, this shift may feel distant, but it affects everyday life more than we think. The app that guides your car, the network that times your bank transactions, even the plane that lands safely at your airport, they all rely on these invisible signals from space. And those signals are now part of a global tug-of-war for control over information, precision, and trust. So as Iran powers down GPS and embraces BeiDou, it's sending a clear message: in the new era of technology, who controls your navigation system controls your future. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want to keep following how global technology and politics intersect, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Tell us in the comments, do you think BeiDou will eventually replace GPS worldwide, or will both systems share the sky?